All right, Elise, thanks so much for being on the Friends with Wheels podcast. If I could start off by asking how you got started with FairVote, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Laszlo. Really happy to be here. I'm the executive director of FairVote Washington, and I took on this role after about a decade of work to improve our democracy, making sure it's accessible for people and that they feel like their voice is heard. And that work started when I was on my own college campus, and since then, I have heard young people, especially, say time and again that they are frustrated with the feeling that they don't have good candidates to vote for. They don't feel like they're represented by the people on the ballot, or like their opinions are actually being reflected in the policies that those elected officials go on to pass. And I think getting more people to vote and a lot of the work I was doing before is still really important, but at the end of the day, we also need to make some more fundamental changes to our system. We need to give people better options and the ability to actually truly reflect their opinions when they go and vote and have that reflected in our elected leaders. And ranked choice voting is the reform that is able to make all of that happen. I was a volunteer with FairVote Washington in 2022 when we had a initiative on the ballot here in Seattle, which did win. And I've stayed engaged with their work since then and started in this role in November of 2024. There's been a ton going on since then.
Mm-hmm. So what do you guys do at FairVote Washington?
So, our vision is a representative democracy that works for all. And there's numerous ways to achieve that. But for us, the most important is ranked choice voting and proportional ranked choice voting. And we advocate for those policies at the state and local level. We have a large and growing movement of volunteers who are with us. And we also work closely with coalition partners to support their work as well as to get them involved in the movement for ranked choice voting.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about the difference between ranked choice voting and proportional ranked choice voting. What's the difference?
Mm-hmm. Well, for the voter, the experience is the same in both situations. And I'm sorry if you hear my cat. She did just get fed. I don't know why she's talking to
Yeah.
me now.
Mm-hmm.
Under ranked choice voting or proportional ranked choice voting, you it's a simple upgrade to our elections nowadays, where instead of just choosing the one person you like the most, you can rank candidates in order of your preference. And that means that instead of debating who you like most versus who you're told is most likely to win, you can actually just vote your conscience and your feelings on the ballot. If your first choice candidate can't win, then your vote transfers to your second choice candidate and on and on. We've seen in places like New York City that ranked choice voting encourages candidates to work together. So Ron Mamdani and Brad Lander put out a series of videos during the campaign telling their voters to rank one of them first and the other one second because they had so much in common. And that's completely different from how campaigns work under our current choose one system, where any vote for another candidate, no matter how close they are to your ideology, takes away support from another candidate. So, ranked choice voting means you're ranking candidates under the system that we just call ranked choice voting or single winner. You are electing one elected official. So, that makes a lot of sense in races like a mayor, where you can only have one person in that position. In proportional ranked choice voting, again, the experience is the same on the ballot, but the results are calculated a little differently to elect multiple people for one district. And what you get then is you lower the threshold that it takes to be elected. If you have, say, three people who are going to be elected to a seat, this is what happens in Portland for each of their districts for city council, then those candidates only need support from 25% of the population in the district. And the result is a elected body that is proportional to the voters. Because in our current system, or what used to be used in Portland, 51% of voters got 100% of the power. And now they have people of color and women and renters people of all different ages and ideologies represented in a much more proportional way than they ever did before under their old system. So proportional ranked choice voting works well for a legislative body like a city council, where you will have multiple people representing the voters.
Mm-hmm. Because why can't ranked choice voting be used here in Washington State? Because I feel like that process is a lot more easier, and it's a lot of flexibility, like you said, where people can choose whoever they want, but just by ranking them.
Yeah, so ranked choice voting can be used in some places in Washington, only a select few cities and counties. Seattle, like I said, the voters chose it on the ballot in 2022, and we are going to start ranking in the 2027 primary for city races. There's a handful of other cities and counties that, because of a legal requirement, we're a charter city or county, those places are able to opt into ranked choice voting. But for every other place in the state, those which tend to be smaller cities and counties, they do not have that option. The state simply doesn't give them the ability to move outside of choose one voting. FairVote Washington has been working on legislation for years now in the state legislature. It's called the Protect Our Voices Act. In the most recent session, this was HB 2210. And that would give the ability to every jurisdiction in the state, to every local jurisdiction in the state, I should say, to use single winner or proportional ranked choice voting if they so choose.
Mm-hmm. And now, is ranked choice voting, is it based on how a state decides to run their elections, or can it go nationally? Because I feel like ranked choice voting, it's like you said, it's more flexibility. It's a lot more flexibility for the voters, but um, like, is it dependent on how each state runs its elections, or can it go national? Like,
It can absolutely be used nationally. And while each state and local jurisdictions make the decision about how their races are run, ranked choice voting can be used in just about any political election that we have in the country. For this to be used nationally, we would need Congress to act. And there's a couple pieces of legislation in Congress right now, the Fair Representation Act and the Ranked Choice Voting Act, which would move the congressional seats to proportional and ranked choice voting, respectively.
mm-hmm,
And we have partners across the country, including FairVote National, who we work with to support that legislation. But at the time being, our focus is within the state of Washington, particularly local races, as we are creating a sort of proof of concept in the state and getting more voters aware of the power of ranking their ballots.
mm-hmm. And I don't know if you've heard about this, but have you sort of heard, like ranked choice voting go on an international level? Because I feel like it could go bigger.
Yeah, ranked choice voting is actually used in a lot of countries around the world. So I grew up, uh, my high school years I spent in Australia. They use a form of ranked choice voting down there. So does the country of Ireland, where it was part of the Good Friday agreements that ended the Troubles. That power sharing that you get from proportional ranked choice voting is part of what ended the decades, centuries of violence in Northern Ireland. And it's used in many more places besides. It's actually a bit unusual on the international stage that America uses first past the post pick one voting. And it's even unusual in the context of our own history. These alternative voting systems have been used in America over 100 years ago. There were many places that used them, and there was a crackdown on that process, partly by the parties at the time, and partly as a result to increasing representation for people of color. And over just a couple decades of most of our elections using single winner or choose one, I should say, choose one elections, it's really cemented this idea in Americans' minds that that is how we do elections, when that's not the case on a longer historical timescale.
Mm-hmm. Now, my podcast is called Friends with Wheels. It's a podcast about disability related topics and stuff like that. So how does Fair Vote Washington sort of help folks with disabilities have easier access to voting and all that stuff?
Mm-hmm. So I think because we want a representative democracy that works for all, this is where not only can ranked choice voting help achieve more representation for people with disabilities, we think about that proportional form of ranked choice voting. It can achieve representation in all sorts of ways. And that includes putting more voices of people with disabilities in our elected office. Most of us will experience a disability at some time in our lives, and our policies and our elected officials tend not to represent that. And that is one consequence of choose one elections. But additionally, we support policies that make voting more accessible and simpler for people to access. So I love mail in voting in Washington, but a lot of people with disabilities prefer to have the option for in person vote centers where there might be a ballot marking device or people who are able to help them to fill out their ballot. And so when opportunities come up to support more vote centers or um, easier access or information about how to find your local vote center, that's all work we support because it gets us closer to that vision of representative democracy.
Now, you wanted to touch more on like a Supreme Court decision that that came down a couple days ago. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so we have been anxiously awaiting this Supreme Court decision for months, and it finally came down this past Wednesday. The case is called Louisiana v. Calais, and it ends the last major protection from the Voting Rights Act that was still active. Many people might remember that in 2013 in Shelby County v. Holder, the Supreme Court effectively ended the VRA's pre-clearance protection. And this is just the latest in a series of cases eroding the major wins that came out of the civil rights movement and culminated in the Voting Rights Act. So Section 2, which this case effectively made impossible to implement or defend, it used to provide the ability and actually the requirement to draw districts to ensure representation for people of color. The VRA is primarily concerned with race. So in Louisiana, there were cases a couple of years ago that required the state of Louisiana to provide 2 of their congressional districts as what we call majority minority or minority opportunity districts. Over a third of the state population is Black people, and they deserved about a third of the seats in Congress as a result, was the previous finding legally. But in Louisiana v. Calais, the Supreme Court announced that they were reversing those previous findings and that plaintiffs would now have to prove the intent of people drawing maps to discriminate if they were to have a finding under Section 2. And that, of course, is never something that is going to be stated or provable under the map making process. So the result is that many districts across the country, not just at the federal level, but state and local districts, anywhere race was a consideration in drawing those districts or could be perceived as being a consideration, districts could be challenged as being impermissibly creating opportunities for representation for people of color. And here in Washington, there's been a series of court cases out in the Yakima area that did proactively provide representation. And those and other locations around the state may now be challenged as being impermissibly accounting for race. So this is a real blow to the project of representation and really the decades of progress that the civil rights movement in the years since have created. And under this new framework, the only nonpartisan means that we have of ensuring representation would be through proportional ranked choice voting. So for us, it has really recommitted our efforts and our fight for proportional ranked choice voting. By providing that option to local jurisdictions around the state, we give them another avenue to represent their communities without solely relying on drawing district lines.
Mm-hmm. And what have you learned in doing this kind of work for FairVote Washington as executive director?
I have learned that ranked choice voting appeals to many people around the state for entirely different reasons. And that's what I love about it. I see democracy as fundamental to everything that we care about. If you're progressive or conservative, or you're in the middle, if your top issue is the environment or civil rights or or free speech or how we regulate guns, no matter what your issues are, you deserve to be represented and to have your voice heard. And we do have people from across the political spectrum in our movement because they know that not only will their views have a better chance of being represented if our reforms are in place, but so will the opposing views, and that there should be room for all voices in a healthy democracy. And in fact, when we do that, we lower the temperature of our political discourse, we reduce political violence like we have seen so recently and so frequently in the last few years, and we better understand each other.
Mm-hmm. And is there anything that people should know about in terms of what FairVote is doing? Are there any sort of events, things that people should know about that are coming up?
So we host a weekly roadmap series. This is a webinar where we talk about issues that are connected to ranked choice voting and give trainings to our volunteers. To find out about those and other events coming up, they should sign up for our email list at fairvotewa.org.
And how can this organization be sort of a blueprint for other nonprofits that want to do the same thing, that want to implement, ranked choice voting, in their states or in their districts or whatever?
There are dozens of groups working for ranked choice voting across the country, and for some of them, the fight looks very different. Ohio just passed a ban on ranked choice voting this year, and there's other states considering doing the same. So I feel very lucky to live in Washington, where we have always prioritized having a strong, healthy democracy and experimenting with it, what that looks like. And that's the role I see Washington playing here, is as a role model state. Once we have Seattle implement next year, and as we have some more local adoptions planned in the years to come, I think that will show what changes are possible from ranked choice voting, how it has positive knock-on effects throughout our political and social culture. And I hope that that will set a model from some of those other states and maybe change some minds of people who have looked to ban alternative forms of voting.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, what can people do to find out more information about FairVote Washington or the work that you do?
They can go to our website, FairVoteWA, so fairvotewa.org. And you can also check us out on social media, primarily Instagram. We're really active there.
All right. Okie dokie. All right.